Imagine every act of kindness, every loving gesture is a potential trap. I learned to live like that, with my heart in a cage built by the man who was supposed to love me. My first love was a whirlwind. He was a poet, an artist, a charismatic force of nature who swept me off my feet with grand declarations and breathtaking gestures. He was everything I thought I wanted: passionate, intense, utterly devoted. At first, the compliments came in a flood. My hair, my smile, my mind, all were works of art to him. He was a master of grand gestures, surprising me with weekend getaways, writing me love letters, telling me I was his muse. I fell in love with the reflection he showed me, a beautiful, worthy, and beloved woman. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my entire world. But slowly, insidiously, the world began to shrink. The compliments started to come with conditions. You're so beautiful when you wear that dress, not that old thing. The gestures of affection started to feel like a performance, a reward for my good behavior. And then came the jealousy. He couldn't stand the thought of me spending time with friends, with family, even on my own. It wasn't about control, he would insist. It was about his love for me, a love so powerful it made him afraid to lose me. The verbal abuse started subtly, disguised as concern. "You're so sensitive," he'd sigh when I was hurt by a cruel remark. "I'm just being honest." He was a master of gaslighting, making me question my own memories, my own sanity. He convinced me that my feelings were wrong, that my reactions were an overreaction. My self-worth, once soaring on his compliments, began to crumble, brick by painful brick. I started walking on eggshells, tailoring my words, my actions, my very thoughts to avoid his disapproval. I was trapped in a gilded cage. He had stripped me of my self-worth, isolated me from everyone I loved, and left me completely dependent on his toxic affection. The love that had felt so warm and beautiful had become a suffocating blanket. I was a puppet, and he was pulling the strings. The escape, when it came, was a brutal, terrifying break. It was a day of raw, ugly confrontation, a final act of psychological cruelty that left me shattered and bruised, a person I no longer recognized. I was finally free, but I was a ghost of my former self. My heart was a fortress, my trust in tatters. I was alone, deeply scarred, and terrified to ever let anyone in again. My emotional walls were impenetrable, built to protect me from the pain that came with loving and trusting someone so deeply. I was a survivor, but a deeply wounded one. Months turned into years. I worked on myself, on my recovery, on rebuilding the person I was before the abuse. I went to therapy. I reconnected with friends and family. I built a life that was stable and secure, a life where I was in control. But my heart remained a fortress. I dated cautiously, but the moment a man became too kind, too caring, too interested, my walls would go up. The smallest gesture, a text asking if I got home safe, a surprise coffee, would send me into a panic. Was it a trap? Was this the first step on the road to a gilded cage? My mind, a victim of trauma, was a landmine of triggers. Then I met Ben. He was different, quiet, unassuming, with a steady kindness that felt safe. There were no grand gestures, no extravagant promises, just a quiet, persistent presence. He listened to me, truly listened, and he never tried to fix me. He just held a space for me to be myself, no matter how broken I felt. He was patient, endlessly patient, with my emotional distance, with my sudden panic attacks, with my moments of inexplicable anger. But my emotional walls were a fortress, and he was a persistent, gentle breeze trying to get inside. I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. When he complimented me, I flinched, bracing for the inevitable criticism that would follow. When he planned a simple dinner, I'd get anxious, convinced there was a hidden agenda. I saw a trap in every act of kindness. My mind, a victim of trauma, was a landmine of triggers. A loving gaze became a sign of impending possessiveness. A thoughtful gift became an attempt at control. I was a person who only knew how to love in the shadows of fear. The harder he tried to break through, the higher my walls went up. He would say something like, "I just want you to be happy." And my mind would twist it into, "I want to control your happiness." His kindness, once so comforting, became a constant, terrifying question. I felt him trying to mend my broken heart, but my mind was so scarred by betrayal that I was convinced he was trying to break it again. The conflict wasn't with him, it was with myself. It was a silent, internal war. The part of me that desperately wanted to trust him, to accept his gentle love, was constantly at odds with the part of me that was terrified of being hurt again. My mind was a battlefield, with old wounds fighting against new hope. The scars I carried were not physical. They were a profound emotional burden, a constant debilitating weight that prevented me from fully loving or being loved. I was convinced that I was doomed to be alone, to live my life behind these walls, forever safe, and forever utterly lonely. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly, but with a quiet, devastating finality. I had a panic attack while on a date with Ben. We were at a friend's party, and an offhand comment about my ex triggered a full-blown flashback. My breath seized, my heart hammered, and the room began to spin. Ben, ever calm, ever steady, led me outside. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat with me on the curb, his hand on my back, a silent, comforting weight. After I had calmed down, I finally, brutally confessed everything. The abuse, the trauma, the constant fear that every act of love was a potential trap. I told him about the walls I had built, the cage I lived in, the constant internal battle. I confessed that his kindness, his patience, his unwavering love was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced. I confessed that I was terrified of him, not because of anything he had done, but because he was capable of a love so profound I was afraid it would leave me vulnerable to being hurt again. I expected him to walk away, to leave me on the curb, a broken, tangled mess of a human being. Instead, he just looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep, profound sadness. "I know," he said, his voice soft. "I've always known." He told me he had seen the way I flinched, the way I retreated, the way my eyes would go dark with a fear he didn't understand. He told me he hadn't left because he saw past the walls, to the broken, vulnerable person I was. He wasn't trying to break down my fortress. He was simply waiting patiently for me to open the gate. "I can't take your pain away," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I can't heal your past. But I can promise you this. My love for you has no conditions. My love for you is not a trap. It's not a cage. It's a key. You don't have to use it, but it will always be there, waiting for you, whenever you're ready." His words, simple and profound, were a revelation. He was not trying to save me. He was offering me a choice. For the first time, the walls of my fortress didn't feel like a prison, but a choice I had to make. The cage wasn't a punishment. It was a relic of a past I could finally choose to leave behind. I made the choice in that moment, the choice to trust him, to let go of the fear. It wasn't a sudden, magical healing. It was a slow, terrifying leap of faith. I took his hand, my fingers trembling, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to be held without fear. The scars I carried were still there. They didn't magically disappear, but they were no longer a weapon to protect me from love. They were a testament to my survival. And in that moment, in his quiet, gentle presence, I took my first, most terrifying step towards a life where I could be loved without fear. The journey of healing from emotional trauma is not a straight line. The weeks that followed were filled with both immense joy and immense fear. I found myself still flinching at a touch, still bracing for a criticism that never came, still struggling to believe that his love was truly unconditional. But Ben, with his endless patience and quiet understanding, never faltered. He didn't push me. He just held a space for me to heal. I learned to communicate my fears, to tell him when I was scared, to explain the triggers I didn't understand myself. He, in turn, learned to understand them. He learned to read my silence, to see the fear in my eyes, and to respond not with frustration, but with a gentle reassurance that I was safe. The scars I carried will never disappear entirely. They are a part of my story, a testament to the pain I survived. But they no longer define me. They are no longer a barrier to love. They are a profound reminder of my own resilience, my own capacity for healing, and the incredible courage it takes to open a mended heart. My relationship with Ben is not a fairy tale. It is a real, messy, beautiful thing, built on a foundation of trust that we have to work on every single day. I am learning to trust him, yes, but more importantly, I am learning to trust myself, to trust my own feelings, my own worth, and my own capacity to love without fear. The scars are a part of me, but they are no longer the whole story. My story is about a girl who built a fortress around her heart, only to find the courage to open the gate and walk out into a new, terrifying, and beautiful world. It's a story of profound healing, of learning to love again, and of finding the courage to believe that the greatest act of love is not being saved, but choosing to be saved. And in that, I have found a profound and lasting peace. The journey of healing from emotional betrayal and learning to trust again is incredibly challenging, but it is not a journey you have to take alone. If you have ever felt the pain of betrayal, the fear of vulnerability, or the struggle to open your heart again, know that your courage is an inspiration. If this narrative resonated with you, I encourage you to share your own experiences in the comments below. How have you navigated healing from past trauma and learned to love again? Your stories of resilience and hope are invaluable. And if this story offered you a moment of connection, understanding, or strength, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Your support helps me continue to share these deeply personal narratives about the human experience. Thank you for listening.